What's up, everybody? It's Onorato Company. It's Chris Onorato. It's Ashley Miller, our Thursday morning live stream. If you're watching us on TV over the weekend, catch up with us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube every Thursday at 10 a.m. across News Channel 13 social media channels. Huge, jam-packed show, Ash. What do I usually do around this time? I waste time by talking about everything we're going to do on the show instead of just doing the show. So let's go.
This is Onorato Company, sponsored by Albany House.
And thanks to all of our local business partners here on the show, keeping us going. Of course, Andy Heck and Katie Osborne at Albany House. I'll be in Clifton Park next Thursday for this show with Andy and Katie. Our guests today, Jack Curry from Yes Network, of course, New York Times bestselling author. He has a new book out that we're going to talk about here. We're also going to talk, of course, about the Yankees and the injuries they've had. Very interesting comments from the GM Brian Cashman yesterday before the Yanks went out and got a walk-off win over the Guardians. I want to ask Jack about that because he was sitting right on the dugout bench next to Cash as he was making those comments. We'll get into the Kentucky Derby. Of course, it's on News Channel 13 on Saturday. Josh Kumjian, who is our in-house horse racing analyst, expert. We've got boxing coming to the Capital Region in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about that, and we'll wrap up the Albany FireWolves season as well. So a lot to do. But let's get to our guest of the hour here on Onorato Company, and that is Jack Curry from the Yes Network, Yankees analyst, Yankees reporter. Jack, it's good to have you on the show. It's Chris and Ashley. How are you?
Hey, Chris. Hey, Ashley. I appreciate you guys taking the time and looking forward to talking with you. And Chris, you're never wasting any time when you're touting the show. That's what you have to do. You got to build up to that point. I don't want you to think you're wasting time. You're telling people what's coming.
Well,
that. Jack, sometimes we get 8 minutes in and we're like, I guess we should roll the show open. So.
Yeah. 8 minutes in, and I might have escaped to go grab a bottle of water. So I understand, Ashley. I got you.
When a teacher gave me an assignment and they said it's got to be 1,000 words or whatever, I would always tell you what I was going to tell you. I would tell you, and then I would tell you what I told you, just to try to fill the pages. It's kind of like this show a little bit sometimes. Jack, you've got the book coming out, the 1998 Yankees, and I want to ask you specifically about the title in a moment here. But first, this jumped at me. I saw your interview with Brian Cashman in the media gaggle yesterday before the game against the Guardians, and I thought his comments were very interesting. You've been around him a lot. How did you take it when you saw Brian Cashman say to Yankees fans, don't count us out? And then I thought the don't give up on us was very interesting. Like, this is one of the winningest franchises in all of professional sports, and it's kind of a plea for patience.
And Chris, he said that toward the end of what was about a half an hour interview. And just a little context, everyone knows every day when you're out at Yankee Stadium, Aaron Boone's going to talk before the game. But we were given a heads up by the Yankees PR staff that Cashman was also going to speak. So we don't know. We're in the dark a little bit at that point. Does he have some kind of announcement? Is there some news that's breaking? Is there another injury? But what Cashman wanted to do was basically own up for the way the Yankees have been performing this season and answer questions that people have on their mind. I thought that he was forthright. I thought that he was honest. I thought you saw a GM who clearly wishes that the team was performing better, but they're not right now, and they're not whole. And it's not to alibi for them, guys, because once you say a team has injuries, the next sentence is, okay, what are you doing without those players? You have to figure out a way to fill the void. I will say this, they're 17-15. It's a long season. They've got 130 games left. Last year, the Phillies floundered, made the World Series. A few years back, the Washington Nationals started 19-31, won a World Series. I'm not saying this Yankee team will take that path. I'm saying that until they get everybody back, the evaluation of who they are is somewhat incomplete.
Jack, I think the most interesting part is a lot of people predicted the AL East to be the best division in baseball. But even if you told me the Yankees got off to a slow start at 17-15, I don't think I would have predicted that they were in the basement of the division, which just tells you how much better maybe even this division is than people thought.
It's a great point, Ashley. This is a killer division. I think when you look at the rest of the season, the Yankees have a lot of ground to make up, not only on the Rays, but on the teams. Orioles are vastly improved. Toronto has been a team that has been inching forward. The Red Sox have played better than I thought they would. But I will also turn it around to this, because I always try and remind fans the length of the season. And Cashman was talking about that yesterday. The Yankees are 17-15 through 32. What would a rational Yankee fan have thought they should be at this point? 19-13, 20-12?
Right.
20-12 is pretty good. So with all of these injuries and no offense, they're maybe 3 games off what you would have thought would have been a really strong pace. Now, you don't want the Rays to run away much more. This weekend in May is a big series. They have to show up against Tampa Bay this weekend. And by that, I mean they got to win a series. I'm not saying they got to sweep the Rays, but they've got to go in, and they've got Cole pitching one of those games. So you would hope that's a game from a Yankee perspective they could win. They've got Herman and Brito in the other 2 games. So in my eyes, if they can take 2 out of 3 from the Rays, it's just inching forward as they try to get whole.
Okay, I've got one more baseball for you here, Jack, before we dive into this book. The new rules. Do we like them? Are we getting thumbs up, thumbs down? And if there's one you don't like or one you love more than the other, what is it?
It's not like for me, Chris. It's love.
Yeah.
I've always thought that I love baseball, and I've covered it for more than 30 years. But when the pace and the tempo of the game is sluggish, and we're watching batters step out or fiddle with their batting gloves, we're watching a pitcher stare in for a sign for 20 seconds, I think you lose people. I think if you want to keep the younger generation involved in baseball, I think the pace of the game is important. I like the activity on the bases. With the larger bases, we're seeing more speed, more action. Now, every time somebody gets on base, you're saying to yourself, is that guy going to run? So I love that. I will say I didn't think I would like the elimination of extreme shifts. I wrote a book with Paul O'Neill, and he talked about how for him, hitting the ball the other way was keeping your hands in, swinging a little bit later, and taking advantage of what the defense was trying to do to you. But now that I've seen the game without extreme shifts, I'm a fan. I think we see more of the defense's athleticism. And I think we see, honestly, the way the game was designed to be played, that if you're a left-handed hitter like Anthony Rizzo and you hit a 200-foot line drive bullet to right field, that's supposed to be a hit.
Jack, your new book out this week, the 1998 Yankees. And this for me, so I'm going to date myself here. I was 12 years old during this run, and I remember it, but not the way that I'd probably remember a run current day. But going through this book, it's a trip down memory lane. And I don't think people remember how good that team was. I mean, like, as I was reading the names, there were guys that I, number one, forgot about, but also it's just like, if you had a team like that today, I think it would still be the best team on the planet. What was it like going through this for you? You lived it. You were a reporter. What was it like writing this book for you? Was it a trip down memory lane for you?
It was invigorating. It was refreshing. I did cover that team. I knew all of those players. And Ashley, when I started interviewing them, my goal was to come up with some new content, to come up with some new information. I don't really do a lot of focusing on specific games until we get to the postseason in this book. I wanted the behind-the-scenes stories. I wanted to know about David Wells and Joe Torre clashing and David Cohn coming in and saving the day. I wanted to know a story that appears late in the book about Darryl Strawberry telling a rookie reliever, Mike Buddy, who had just been sent down to the minor leagues, hey, maybe you should ask Joe if you can hang around today. They're taking the team picture. This was in September. So Strawberry had enough empathy and enough foresight to say, you're going to want to be in this team picture. So Mike Buddy hangs around, Joe Torre okays it, and Mike Buddy, who's now the athletic director at West Point, said to me, that picture hangs proudly in my home office. Were it not for Darryl Strawberry, I would not be in that picture. So those were the kinds of stories I wanted to tell in this book.
And the book is out now. You see it scrolling at the bottom of your screen, the 1998 Yankees, the inside story of the greatest baseball team ever. Now, listen, I could call this the greatest sports talk podcast in the capital region of New York, and I don't know that people would. But when you put something like that on the cover of a book, Jack, did that take a little, or did you feel like, hey, I can absolutely stand behind this?
I think that I proved that point in the book, Chris. This was just not me standing on a mountaintop and saying, I think they were the best team ever. Most wins ever. No one's won 125 games. Fourth highest winning percentage ever. I think you have to look for dominance. What separates one great team from another great team? They had the highest run differential since the 1939 Yankees. That means that they just beat teams into submission. They were the highest rated defensive team that season. And this is something that I don't hold lightly. They won 3 rounds of playoffs. Who's going to argue with the 1927 Yankees, Ruth and Gehrig, and a really good pitching staff? And I get it, higher run differential than the 98 Yankees. But when you won back in those days, you had to win 1 round of playoffs.
Yep.
I think that's a big factor. The Los Angeles Dodgers have been the best team in Major League Baseball across the last decade. Best record. They've got 1 championship, and it was in the shortened year, the 2020 year, which to me just shows you how hard it is to win round after round. And the 98 Yankees went 11-2 in the postseason. And I hope I have this number right. I know it's in the book. Outscored opponents 62-34. So all of those factors, Chris and Ashley, that's what led me to say that. And one more thing, John Thorne is an MLB historian. MLB pays him to be their guy who is available to talk history. I interviewed him. He picked the 98 Yankees.
One of the most interesting things, and I think you used the word dominance, Jack, just now, but one of the most interesting things was a quote from Jeter in the book where he said, we wanted to pummel people every day. And this is a mentality that I think has changed over time as guys have gotten friendlier amongst teams. I don't know that teams go out and have that mentality. Can you just kind of take us into the mentality of that team versus what maybe you would see on a today's Yankee team or a today's any other team?
Ashley, I wrote a book with Derek Jeter more than 20 years ago. I covered his entire career. When I interviewed him for this book, I was thrilled that he said what he did, because Jeter would not have said that in 1998, 1999. Yeah. He would have never wanted to give the opposition the idea that he thought they were the greatest. So the fact that he said that, I think, was just taking us inside who that team thought it was. And they did want to pummel teams, and they did want to win every inning. You've heard teams say, we want to win every game, we want to win a series. Jeter said they wanted to win every inning. And there's one anecdote in the book that I describe where Darren Holmes, a first-year Yankee, heard Jeter walking into the clubhouse. And one day he'd say 155 guys, and then maybe 2 weeks later he'd say 146 guys. Finally, one day Holmes went up to Paul O'Neill and said, what is Jeter doing? What are these numbers that he's screaming out? And O'Neill very matter-of-factly said, oh, that's how many more games we have to go before we win the World Series.
Wow.
And Holmes said, in that moment, I got chills. And this is a guy who had been in the major leagues for 7 years at that point. He said, I got chills. And I said, okay, this is what the Yankees are about. This is what they're trying to do here.
By the way, I'm glad I took the one shot here. Look at the Emmys back there with Jack Curry. I mean, forget the writing credentials. The TV credentials are just as strong with Jack.
One thing, Chris, so this setup was created during the pandemic, which we all know. I will say it was my director who said to throw some hardware back there.
Yeah.
You notice I have a couple of baseballs. Those baseballs are from my little league and high school career, because without a passion for baseball since I was a youngster, you're maybe not winning an Emmy one day. So I'm trying to add a little humility to what might look a little egotistical there.
No ego at all. We know that. Jack, I want to point this out too, because when I was doing some sports talk radio in Albany, we had you on the show with David Cohn. I want to point out the 2 books. You've mentioned them here. Full Count, The Education of a Pitcher is the book with Coney. Swing and a Hit, 9 Innings of What Baseball Taught Me is the book with Paulie. Which of those 2 guys was the more intense of the 2?
Oh, wow. Chris, that's a hard question. I think the easy answer would be O'Neill, because he played every day. And we saw the Gatorade bashing. We saw the fiery nature. But I would have a hard time calling anybody more intense and more fiery than David Cohn. On the days he pitched, Cohn was maniacal on the mound. I'd probably give Paul a slight edge, Chris, because he played every day. But David Cohn, he would want to rip your throat out. And he was the pitcher's thinking man's pitcher. I sort of compare Garrett Cole to him. I was at the stadium yesterday talking to Garrett Cole, and I love when he dives deep in on analysis. And we were actually talking about the 98 Yankees because I gave Cole a copy of the book. And I said, give me your book report when you get a chance. Cole started going over the entire 98 Yankee rotation. And he was probably, I don't know what he was at that point, 7. But he knew through history who all those guys were. So Coney reminds me of Cole. Paul gets the slight edge because he's got more Gatorade bashing expertise than Coney.
That's fair. Ash, final word.
Well, I was just going to say, if we list out this rotation, it's crazy. We haven't mentioned Andy Pettitte. We haven't mentioned, and if we're going to talk about him as like a 3 or a 4, could you imagine having El Duque as your, like that rotation was unbelievable. Oh, by the way, then give the lead to Mariano Rivera and let him slam the door. Just unbelievable stuff. Really cool book, Jack. 1998 Yankees. The inside story of the greatest baseball team ever. Go out and get it. I assume you can get it everywhere books are sold.
You can get it everywhere books are sold. And quick thought, Ashley, since you mentioned El Duque, I wrote an essay about El Duque that's online with the New York Times right now about how, to me, he was the most fascinating player on that team. So if you're an El Duque devotee, check that out.
Yeah, for
Very
sure.
Cool. Awesome. Jack, we so appreciate the time, man. Continued success with the book. Everybody go out and get that book on the 98 Yankees. Check out those other 2 titles by Jack as well. Really interesting, the collaboration that went on with Paul O'Neill and David Cohn, respectively, for those 2 books. Jack, thank you, man. We'll keep watching on the Yes Network.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Great to talk with Jack Curry
Really cool.
here on Onorato and Company. And,
The book
and
is awesome.
As a Braves fan, okay, all this 90s baseball talk brings me all pain.
You should have brought that up while he was on.
I don't want him laughing at me. All right, we're back right after this on Onorato and Company. More to come, everybody.
Happiness is found in simple things. The sun on your face, sharing laughs, at the campground, getting wet, relaxing together, the love of family. There's never been a better time to go outside and play. Alpenhaus Pool Spa Boat and RV. Bringing families together and creating memories since 1964.
You've heard of unsung heroes. The men and women of Nyskoba are the unseen heroes. For the past year, you've learned about our many charitable endeavors. Now it is my privilege to share with you the work performed by our members, the 20,000 state correction and law enforcement officers shielded from view. They work in difficult and dangerous conditions and are an extension of the police who protect our neighborhoods. Nyskoba honors New York's police and firefighters and salutes its own members who help deliver a peaceful night's sleep.
And now back to Onorato and Company, sponsored by Alpenhaus.
All right, here we go, Ash. A lot to do on the show this week. Little time to waste, but great to have Jack Curry with us. If you joined us late and missed it, you can always go back on social media and find it. We've got the Stanley Cup Playoffs happening. We've got the NBA Playoffs happening. Let's hit them both.
And now, dirty, difficult, and done. Sponsored by Performance Industrial.
And a shout out to Bill Miller and his entire team at Performance Industrial. They do really good things around the capital region, even when they aren't cleaning industrial kitchens and those types of things or doing epoxy on floors. They are supporting great organizations and local nonprofits in the 518, which is why we love partnering up with Bill and his team. All right, Ash, you are always first on this, or generally so anyway. You're up.
Yeah, not always, but you're right. Again, my dirty difficult done is that the wait was difficult for Joel Embiid, who had campaigned for MVP of the NBA for several years going now. But now it's finally done. The Philadelphia center wins his first MVP, and I think this one was probably as warranted as the voting showed. I mean, he pretty much ended up blowing away Nikola Jokic in the final voting. I think he got 73 of the 100 first place votes. This is a guy, he's 29. He spent the very early parts of his career very much injured, missed the first 2 seasons. First in scoring for the second straight season, but he averaged 33 points a game Like, it's absurd. And obviously the shooting numbers for him, he's like a 55% or 55% from the floor shooter, and Jokic is 63. That is a little bit of a, I guess, story of where they play. Obviously they play down by the bucket, but I think the biggest reason for Embiid's number being so much lower is that he shoots the three a lot more. So yeah, congratulations to him. I was kind of sick of like the, woe is me, I didn't win. Nobody's more deserving than Nikola Jokic for the last 2 seasons, but I'm glad that he got his. The numbers show he deserves it, and we'll see if he can get the Sixers where an MVP should.
And Embiid's got to stay healthy in the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's been an issue.
He hasn't played. Like, he's
and
been out
Jokic,
the last plus.
Who was the 2-time defending MVP, has to get to a finals. Like, both of these guys are terrific big men in the league. We got to win some important games, guys, and we got to be there present for them. So that's my
no doubt. And it feels like the Nuggets are primed for such a run.
LA, healthy LeBron and AD.
LA's got to get through Golden State first, too. Like,
that's good. All right, here's my dirty difficult done. Win the President's Trophy. Consider yourselves done early in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Bruins had, beyond a President's Trophy, a record-setting season, wins, points, all of that, out in 7 games in the first round. There has not been a President's Trophy winning team to win the Cup in more than a decade.
Yeah, I was going to say it's easy.
And in fact, the last 6 or 7 teams to win the President's Trophy, counting the Bruins, haven't gotten out of the second round.
Yeah, brutal.
And look, you say, well, what's the reason for that? I don't know, other than some speculation that maybe you push so hard all regular season long that it catches up with you sometime in the postseason. Here's one more interesting note on the President's Trophy, and maybe there's really something to this. The team that, so for instance, the Panthers, team that wins the President's Trophy. Well, I'll use the Avalanche as a better example. Avalanche won the President's Trophy 2 years ago. They lost in the second round. The next year, they win the Cup. The Panthers win the President's Trophy last year. They lose in the second round. They get swept in the second round. They now look like maybe the best team in the East, maybe the best team in hockey right now. So maybe it takes a year for these President's Trophy teams to figure it out.
The other thing that I thought was kind of an interesting take is that while the Bruins played such fantastic hockey all year long, they were never in a position where they had to win because they were blowing teams out. They were never in a tough spot toward the end of the season where it was like, we have to win to get in. We have to win to affect our playoff seeding.
Fair.
They didn't do any of that. So they played not meaningless hockey, but they didn't play in the atmosphere and under the pressure of a first round playoff series. And that was the first time they did it all season. And it was the last time they did it all season.
You're smiling. So I can imagine.
We had a Jay Pulatsky,
Please
poor guy.
do.
He said, hang on, I'll give it to you. He said, give me a heads up before the Bruins eulogy. Well, we sprung it on you, Jay. Sorry about that, bud.
Yeah, we started the show with a guest, so we didn't do a roll call. Carol is watching, of course. Good morning, Carol. Joy is watching beyond
your
teaching
dance
me.
partner, Joy.
The cha-cha. Joy is watching, which is great. Chris Rooney was plugged in for that Jack Curry interview. Absolutely love it. The Rock Man is here. He's all fired up about his Boston Celtics. They got a huge win with Embiid's return on Wednesday night. Interesting stuff there. And this was, what's so funny?
It was your dirty difficult done. I also smiled because of that, because I thought he stole it, and then you threw up your new one.
Yeah, Nick, this was my dirty. So the Oilers get 4 from Draisaitl. The Stars get 4 from Pavelski, back-to-back nights, and both their team lose. And those teams only scored 4.
Yeah.
Weird. I mean, that's weird, like Kirk baseball stuff. Weird stuff that just you don't expect to see, and that ends up happening. All right, are we going to see anything weird on Saturday at Churchill Downs with the Kentucky Derby? I mean, this is we need help on this year because it feels like a very jumbled field with one favorite, but my goodness, this it feels like it could go a bunch of different turns, doesn't it? We'll find out. We're going to ask our in-house expert, Josh Kumjic.
We've promoted him
to handicap this field a little bit for us. We're back right after this on Onorato Company.
what kind of stories that's been told on you. That may be a lot of things in life you used to do. If you can't give true love to me, I'll understand. Just do the best you can.
Michelob Ultra, 2.6 carbs and 95 calories.
And now back to Onorato Company, sponsored by Albany House.
All right, Ash, you said it before the commercial break there. We've promoted him, but in fact, he did just recently get a promotion.
Indeed, he did.
Josh Kumjian is our assistant news director, but I like to just occasionally pick his brain to see if he'll give me anything good. This is a guy who does his homework with the program. And so you get somebody like me who's looking for low-hanging fruit. You don't want to just give away the book. You know what I mean? But Josh is going to help out our viewers.
A racing analyst who gets paid to do that, Josh Kumjian knows the most of any person that I know.
But there you go. Oh, that's an endorsement, huh? Let's bring him into the conversation then and figure out who the heck is going to win the Kentucky Derby on Saturday. Coverage starts at noon on News Channel 13.
There we go. There we go. I read a program better than I set up a camera. How about that?
Yeah, keep going.
Go a little bit further for me.
There we go.
Move the body is always easier to move. All right, Josh, help us out here, man. It's. I said to you in the newsroom, it feels like it has been a cold Kentucky Derby trail. Why?
Well, I would probably say because you haven't had that horse that's run off the page, right? You know, we're used to seeing these horses that have these monster performances. Oftentimes they'll happen out west with a Bod Baffert horse who is now kind of out of the Derby game for the last couple of years. You'll see a horse that just jumps off the screen, wins by 6 or 7 lengths, and everybody kind of circles that horse and says, that's the one. That's my Derby favorite. We don't really have that horse that's running off the screen this year, so I think that certainly plays a role in a lack of buzz.
I know Chris said one favorite. I'd argue there's probably 2, but both belong to the same trainer, and that's Todd Pletcher. He's got Tappet Trice, and he's got Forte. There's your odds. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I have no idea about this Derby.
Yeah. You talk about Forte. He's a horse that's really done nothing wrong, but people are looking for reasons to pick against him. His last race was maybe his least impressive race, which has people maybe a little alarmed going into the Derby. He looked maybe a little bit empty as they came into the top of the stretch, seemed to find another gear, though, as horses came up to him and kind of cruised on by. That being said, 20-horse field, 3-1, hard to take when he's a horse that isn't always in perfect position, might be a little bit off the pace. Traffic trouble could come into play. I don't know. I think 3-1, he might go off even lower than that. We could see 5-2, 2-1 at post time. So if you want to swallow that short price, that's tough to take.
Okay, how about Tappet Trice then, Josh?
So, yeah, I think he's a horse that's constantly improving, right? I think a lot of people have circled him in terms of a horse that makes a lot of sense in terms of a horse that's – I always look for horses in the Derby that know how to find the wire because you want winners, right? Horses that have won before. It's hard enough to win in a 7 or an 8 horse field, let alone when you have 19 competitors. So, he's coming off certainly a nice performance in the Bluegrass at Keeneland. And a lot of people have circled that as a race where, he did all the right things. His numbers have consistently gotten better on a speed figure standpoint. He has an aggressive jockey in Luis Saez, and he's drawn a little bit to the inside, which means he's probably going to have to go, which typically Derby horses, I know last year we had a horse come from wildly off the pace, but typically horses are in good position throughout most of the race to win a Derby.
Brad Cox has 4 horses in the Derby. Is that right?
Yeah.
Between him and Fletcher, we've got 7 of 20. Yeah. Is there any one of his that you like more than another?
I'm kind of torn on the Cox horses. He always seems to have his horses peaking this time of year. One horse that's interesting to me is Verifying. He's drawn a little bit to the inside in the 2-hole, but he has certainly a jockey that knows how to win in Kentucky with Tyler Gaffalione there. He'll have to get an aggressive trip in order to win. Now, he ran really well in the Champagne. He had kind of a disappointing juvenile, some would say. last year in the Breeders' Cup, but he ran pretty well in the Bluegrass as well. So I could see him getting A+ position if he's hustled out of the gate, and then all bets are off once they hit that first turn. If you have that lead, everybody has to come and get you. And I could see him being a horse that's up on the front end.
All right, you are not like me and Ash. You have actual work to do in the building, so we're going to let you go in a second, and maybe Ashley will ask you for a pick. We'll see.
Okay.
Win us some money here.
I was going to say, is there a rich strike?
Yes. Is there a rich strike in this field?
No, but it could happen.
I don't know if there's a rich strike this year. I think a horse that I have my eyes on is Angel of Empire, who's also a Cox horse. Flavian Pratt's up on that horse. He is a closer, which is a problem often in the Derby, but he seems to be able to make an extended run. He has a lot of stamina. Maybe he's cut out to make that run and hold off horses if they get a hot pace, which they could. A lot of people are interested in probably the most polarizing horse in this race, the Japanese horse. But those horses tend to not do well coming over from the United Arab Emirates with those Dubai races. So if I had to pick a real long shot for you, I'd go with the 11 Disarm. That's a Steve Asmussen horse. Rosario's up for him. He's a gun runner, so those horses tend to mature a little bit later than others. But Gun Runner ran pretty good in the Derby and only got better from there. So if I had to take a long shot, I would go with Disarm.
Josh, this is kind of a weird question, and you can give me your pick at the end if you want, or your, trifecta, whatever. Is the Derby not a fair representation of a horse's talent? And I say that knowing, like, when you win the Derby, you're obviously a good horse, but if you don't win the Derby or perform poorly, I don't think it's a fair representation. Like, you're not running a lot of races with 20 horses.
Yeah, I mean, trip matters in the Derby more than anything. So you could say that, sure, horses get a bad trip, they don't win the Derby. Some would argue that, listen, great horses make their trip and they find a way to always be in the right position. You'll look at horses that have won this race in the past, obviously some of the greatest all time, and you say, well, they had a perfect trip. Well, they didn't have a perfect trip. They had good position because they have that positional speed. They have a second and third gear that their jockey can ask them for on the backstretch to get in position, and then they're hitting the top of the stretch, and you're like, well, they're right there. Well, that's because they're a great horse. You'll, of course, get your oddballs that win this race, a Rich Strike, a Mind That Bird, horses that just seem to catch lightning in a bottle. They get a fast pace that melts down, and then their jockey has maybe the best ride of their lives, and all of a sudden everyone's staring at their program and trying to figure out who the horse was. But I would say it may not be the fairest representation. I think when you hit those 12, 13 horse fields, that's a great representation of a proper size field. 20 is a lot. I mean, you can, for many horses, the Derby is over as soon as those gates open. You get slammed both ways, even if you're a superstar horse, and then you're done for. If you get banged up like that, you've lost all chance to stay in position.
10 weeks until Saratoga, my man.
Hard to believe.
This was on no prep, Ash. I asked Josh like 10 minutes before the show, hey, want to pop on and talk about the Kentucky Derby? No prep. He's already got it done.
And we treated him like a real analyst. It wasn't like we were like, here's some softballs. Like,
right. Ready to go for Saturday. Josh, thank you, buddy.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Good luck.
That is our assistant news director, Josh Kumjian, who is as well-versed as you can tell in the horse racing sport as anybody really we know. All right, when we come back here on Onorato and Company, conversation about a boxing event in the 518 that people really should check out. It's such, right, this is an area that's so rich in boxing history. There's one coming to one of the most historical venues in the capital region in terms of sports, and that's the Washington Avenue Armory, of course. Back right after this on O&Co.
I don't care what kind of stories that's been told on you. That may be a lot of things in life you used to do. If you can't give true love to me, I'll understand. Just do the best you can.
Michelob Ultra, 2.6 carbs and 95 calories.
And now back to Onorato Company, sponsored by Alpen House.
Back on Onorato Company now, and if you have lived in the capital region even for only like a week, you probably have been told how rich this area is in boxing history. And so anytime there is a local boxing event, we love to talk about it. We've done it a number of times on this show over the last few years. And there is a boxing event coming to downtown Albany, to the Armory, and that's a big deal. And that's why we have Ray Schott on the show with us here on Onorato Company. Ray from Schott's Boxing, it's good to have you on, man. Thank you for popping on the show. Let's talk about this cool event you've put together here. Boxing back at the Armory, Saturday, May 13th. Why, why did you want to make sure that there was kind of a focus on this sport in downtown Albany?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm a big fan. I used to watch you back in the day when I was in high school. I went to South Colony. We used to always try to, joke about trying to get on big board sports and everything like that when we were playing back in the day. So this is a huge honor to get on here in a different capacity, about more than I wanted to in high school. But yeah, like you said, boxing. Back in Albany at the Washington Avenue Armory, we've got 20 amateur fights scheduled for that night. $20 at the door to get in, and it's gonna be great. We've got all kinds of local fighters from all kinds of gyms from the Albany Parks gym, the Schenectady Ring of Hope gym, our gym, Shots Boxing. All kinds of local talent and young fighters coming up. We'll probably have a couple kids fighting. We'll probably have a couple masters fighting, older guys. We'll have a couple open class fights, guys that are hoping to go pro someday. All kinds of everything in between. If you've never been to a live boxing event, this would be hopefully the one to go to. You know what I mean? If just kind of like any sport, you go to watch baseball on TV, basketball, football, whatever it is. When you go watch it live, it's like a whole different story. So if you've never seen boxing live, then come check it out, and you'll probably be a fan for life.
Why the Armory, Ray?
Why the Armory? Well, that's a great question. It's if you don't know the history of the Albany, right now that's where the Patroons play, and we've been able to work with Michael and Kathy over there. They're like the ones who run the place and who operate the Patroons, and they've been nice enough to have us kind of back in and have our event there at the Armory. But it's aside from the Patroons, everybody knows about the rich history of the Albany Patroons, yourself obviously included. But they've had a rich history of boxing there in the past. If you don't know anything about boxing, then even the name Mike Tyson probably even rings a bell to even just the casual sports fan. He was up here fighting in Albany. All of the greats, history of boxing has been through the Capital District in Albany. And unfortunately, the past few years with COVID and everything happening, it's kind of been at a little bit of a standstill compared to what it used to be, obviously back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s when it was really, cranking along.
I got a couple on the sports specifically for you here. And again, the event, the information's at the bottom of your screen, everybody. Saturday, May 13th. The doors open at 5. That's the first fight, 6 p.m. boxing at the Armory. There you go. I know it's a weird mix of almost opposite of what you're used to. So you obviously have the gym, Shots Boxing.
Yes.
For people who don't know a lot about the sport of boxing and they just say it's just violent, or you're like me and you ooh and you ah and you wince every time somebody gets hit. What is it about this sport that you feel helps an athlete either with self-confidence, fitness? What are the qualities in this sport that maybe translate beyond the ring?
Wow, that's a great question. And, we get a lot of people in our gym that are kind of right in that same boat as what you just talked about, either whether they're here looking to gain some confidence or whether they're here just looking to get in shape or whether they're here, to just have some way to spend their time other than, something else that's much less productive that they would have otherwise been doing. Boxing is great for all of that. But beyond that, it's when you look at just the concept of fighting itself, you touched on it, just a second ago when you said like some people find it like kind of like pointless or barbaric, just like people hitting each other in the face or something like that. But it's, it goes back to the, hundreds of years ago, probably even before the sport of boxing, was even started, that like the curiosity of, who would win in a fight between this guy or that guy, the two strongest guys from across town, each other, whatever the case may be. It's always been just like a human curiosity. And, like I said that now with like, there's all kinds of different forms of fighting, whether it's wrestling or jiu-jitsu or cage fighting or boxing or whatever it is. But it's, just like the history of that human instinct to see who would win against one or the other. Boxing has, probably the richest history of, any of those sports that I just mentioned. So it's, if like whatever your curiosity level is as a sports fan or fight fan or boxing fan or whatever it is, like I said, whatever, like if you've never seen it, live, then you don't truly get, a full appreciation for, what it's like. You could watch, like, whether it's, hockey, basketball, football, like I said, whatever, like the first time you go see it live, you come away from it thinking it's, like it's a whole different story.
Well, I've already had Abraham Supernova throw.
Yes. Yeah. He'll probably be there, check it out. If you want, you could meet him, sign some autographs. Probably Tony Marshall, former middleweight champion of the world, will probably be there hanging out, signing autographs. You never know who you're going to see at these boxing shows when you watch on TV. Who's going to?
So maybe somebody in the ring on the 13th will be throwing fists at me in the News Channel 13 studio the way Nova did recently. That might be the future for them. That would be pretty cool.
Absolutely, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you on one of our cards. We'll gear you up. We'll have you fight the guy from Channel 6. Whatever the people at the Armory are willing to be able to set up for us. We're willing to have it.
Ray, good stuff with this event, man. Good luck. Keep them rolling. Right, you do one, you roll it right into another one, and I know you'll keep that momentum going, dude. Thanks for joining the show. Good luck at the show on the 13th with Boxing Back at the Armory, presented by Shots Boxing, and that's Ray Shot with us here on Onorato and Company. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate it.
Teams, athletes, organizations. We're transforming the custom apparel industry through product and purpose. Claim your crown.
Looking for a fun and relaxing way to spend time on the water? Look no further than the luxury of a pontoon boat. With their spacious and comfortable design, pontoons from Barletta, Sunchaser, and Suntracker offer plenty of room for family and friends to enjoy a day in the sun. Whether you're looking to ski and tube, swim, or simply relax, pontoon boats provide the perfect platform for all of your aquatic adventures. So why wait? Stop by Alpenhaus Boats today or shop online anytime at alpenhausboats.com.
And now back to Onorato and Company, sponsored by Alpenhaus.
All right, Ash, back on Onorato and Company here, and that boxing event.
Wife card. Oh,
I'm sorry?
I said real quick, let me play the wife card.
Okay.
No chance you get in a boxing ring.
No. Well, you don't have to tell.
You need your pretty face for television.
Listen, the last thing you have to worry about is me getting into a boxing ring or a UFC octagon or anything of the sort. That is not happening. The last fist fight I had was sometime in early high school. Yeah, early in high school on a basketball court. That's the last time I had a fist fight. So that is not happening. All right, Glenn Clark from the Albany FireWolves still to come here in a brief moment on Onorato and Company. But Ash, we've got business to take care of here. As we said last month, it's already last month. We had a few days left in April. I wanted to see the thing play out.
Yeah.
And boy, I'm glad we waited to name our Marcella's Appliance MVP of the month.
It's time for the Marcella's Appliance Center MVP of the month.
And a shout out to Johnny Marcella Nick, Madelone, the entire team at Marcella's. My parents needed a new microwave. They went to Marcella's. That's how we.
Of course they did.
It's the only way to do it. All right, our MVP of the month. We agree on this every single time we pick one. This was inspired by your idea,
and I thought we should do this leading into Coach Clark because he's a big Leafs fan, so he may have something to add to this.
Well, there you go. All right, Austin Matthews is our Marcellus Appliance MVP of the month. You see the numbers there on your screen. But beyond that, he's the MVP because he's the best player on a team that just ended a really long postseason series winning drought. It's time.
This felt like it was a little bit overplayed, but I guess we can ask Coach Clark, if you were a fan of this team, does 2004 feel like an eternity ago? Well, I can answer that. I graduated high school in 2004. It feels like a really long time ago. The last time they had won a playoff series before that, almost 20 years. It's a long time. So it's kind of like monkey off the back. But then I want to think that a franchise as storied as the Leafs is going to say, like, okay, well, now that that's over, let's look at the big picture. Like, let's go win a cup. Forget the first round playoff series. Like, that's not what we're here about. But yes, Austin Matthews, we pick him over Mitch Marner, a guy like Mitch Marner who, nothing to take away from him, 2 goals and 9 assists. You're probably not winning that series without him either. But the Leafs finally get it done. Toronto rejoice. Now it's on to the Panthers, which they're down 1-0.
And a little puck luck in that game
no
as
doubt.
well. Off Tavares' stick to vault them forward.
Yep.
That was, sometimes you need a little bit of that. All right, well, you teed it up for Coach Clark. We will talk lacrosse, but let's find out what he thinks about this Maple Leafs team. As you say, it's his team. Coach Glenn Clark with us here on Onorato Company. Clarky, what's up, man? What do we think here of the Leafs ending that drought?
Well, first, hello. It's as painful as you can imagine in the city of Toronto. And actually, I went to the University of Toronto and I played hockey at the University of Toronto. And I lived across the street from Maple Leaf Gardens where they used to play. So I saw some of their highs, but it's been a lot of lows for a long time. And it's hard to describe what it's like in that city with the Leafs and the fandemonium that goes around it. So. That is certainly the air going out of a balloon in terms of everyone can take a little bit of a breath and relax, and they got through the first round. So I was happy for them.
Good. All right. Now let's get to some lacrosse. Forget that hockey stuff we talk about. I know Canadians love hockey, but Canadians also love box lacrosse, and that's what we're here for. Follow the Pack, our weekly segment, and Coach Clark is wrapping up a season, the second season here in Albany for the Albany FireWolves. Coach, now that you're somewhat removed from it, what are the overall feelings as you kind of put a bow on a season? Obviously not the record you guys won at 3-15, but I know we've talked to you all season about how bright the future is going forward.
Yeah, and it was a challenging season, and when I talk about it, there's reasons behind it, and I'm always careful that they don't come across as excuses because nobody likes excuses in pro sports. But we were young, and we had a unusual amount of injuries, which are reasons. I think we were in quite a few close games. But having said all that, we sort of knew this was a springboard season where we were building for what's next. We changed out a lot of players through the draft, got young, didn't have those players this year because of COVID. So the community will see them next year, and another the 1 overall pick this year we have as well. So we've got lots of young, exciting talent coming in. And this year was always going to be about seeing what we had, seeing how far we could get with this group, but really understanding that with our age and sort of what's next, we're building for 2 through 5 years. And then we got derailed by key injuries at key times all throughout the season. It was difficult to manage. And I was, to be honest, just 3-15, but I was pretty proud with how the guys responded and played hard, and nobody ever mailed it in, which is what you asked.
I've been a broken record on this show saying I hate when pro sports teams don't have a realistic view of what they are, right? You're a tweener franchise where are we rebuilding? Are we ready to contend? Whatever. I love when a team just goes all in either way, make a big trade to contend or say, you know what, let's start moving some guys. Let's focus on the draft. Let's worry about next year and maybe even the year after that. So I thought you guys did a really good job of just understanding where you were, the injuries, the situation, the record, all of that, and saying, okay, let's worry about next year when we've got more guys coming in after the COVID year and through the draft. Having said all that, what was the challenge, Coach, of trying to keep a team together when you're not really together all that much? You know, like most teams are used to practicing every day or being in the facility every day together. That must have been difficult to make sure everybody still was on the same page with effort and focus when you're not around them every single day.
Yeah, and that looked like a couple of things. One of the things is we have a captains group, which comprises of 5 guys, and how we sort of do it is they have their own groups that they're responsible for during the week. So there's a lot of dialogue from me to the captains to the players. And they do a lot, and they're sort of my conduit between the players and admin. And our captains do a great job with those guys. They were actually, sort of, it may sound sort of schoolish, but they were doing like book studies with looking at things, different writings that, whether it was sports psychology related, motivational. So they were doing things like that, talking about their workouts. So I rely on the captains a lot to do that. And then our messaging with them going forward was, I said to our coaches and ownership and management, there's no value in beating these guys up as this year goes along. Like they feel it, they know it, they understand, they hear it. So for me to be pounding on them, it was more about how are you going to present yourself? How are your teammates going to remember you? Because seasons like this can go south pretty quickly. Finger pointing, toxicity, all that type of stuff. And we didn't have any of that. So that's probably our biggest accomplishment of the year was managing mindset and keeping these guys positive when it's not a positive environment. And, we had a lot of young guys that got way more opportunities than they probably would have, which bodes well going into next season and beyond. So, but your point, Chris, was bang on about teams that understand where they were. That was a very conscious decision in the offseason. We'd lost Callum Crawford in the previous free agency season, Stephen LeBlanc, Ryan Benesh, Joe Rezataritz, on and on. I mean, we'd lost the 2 leading scorers from the league in consecutive free agent sessions. So we got to a place of understanding where we said, well, we're having a difficult time acquiring free agents. We're having a difficult time maintaining our own free agents. And you get star players 2 ways in this league. Free agency when they're a little older, or you draft them. So we've drafted a couple of stars, and that's going to be our path forward.
Yeah, Coach, you've talked about how bright the future is, but realistically, I think this fan base, we've talked about it, can expect a team that looks pretty vastly different next year because of the numbers game. You only have 21 spots on this team. You've got 7 guys who were hurt, who you realistically think will be back and play a role. You've got several stars that you drafted in last year's draft. You've got this year's draft. So can you kind of explain how putting this team together in the offseason might go?
Yeah, you dress 17 players, runners for a game and 2 goalies. We could arguably have 8 or 9 changes to that 17, which it's half your roster. And that's changes from within. I mean, that's guys coming back from injury, the draft picks coming in, players being slotted down a little bit into more appropriate roles. So it's going to be very different. And it's going to be a process of getting to that top level, because I think once you sort of establish that foundation of sort of excellence and the talent base you want, then it gets even harder, because you see the Buffaloes, the Torontos, the San Diegos, and that's where we want to get to from a talent base. And then it's so close when you get to that level, because we beat those teams. We beat Buffalo, we beat Rochester, we beat Halifax, we beat very good teams in our 3 wins. And so it's going to be, it's interesting. This is the exciting sort of part of getting back to that level. And we think we have pieces that'll do it. And it's going to be interesting and exciting to watch it unfold.
By the way, the off-season workouts are no joke. Look, I mean, Coach is jacked. We might get our suits from the same guy, but we fill out our suits a little differently. I'll tell you that much.
It's my pastime. I can't play anymore, so I got to do something.
You're living the retired life, sort of, right? I mean, you're all in on the FireWolves. You're a coach. I know you're not. You're coach and general manager. You've got your work cut out for you, but when you're not doing that, you got to do something else. Lifting some weights, huh?
We're used to double duty with our careers. I was a teacher for long, and now my days are. It's a 24/7 job, but there's little pockets all over the place that you can squeeze into, which is nice.
Well, Ash is going to bug you to set up a time for us to grab dinner now that we've hit the off season. Let's make sure we do that. We appreciate the support on the show all year long. Right back at you. We'll get more people in the seats next year. You guys will get more wins. It's going to be a good FireWolves season next year. Coach, we appreciate it, man.
Yeah, right back at you guys. I love the support and always talking to Ash every week. And we'll definitely, you'll get Cassie and I out to one of your favorite spots, and we'll
yes. I jump up on the bench and he's like, "Oh, you again? God, just leave me alone."
I'm just trying to be in a good mood when I talk to you.
Clarky, thank you, man.
I get it. I know it's not me. It's just the situation.
It's the event. Yeah. All right, Ken.
Thanks,
All right,
Coach.
Clarky. Thank you, man. Be well. Coach Glenn Clark, the GM as well, the Albany FireWolves, as they hit the off season and get ready to go for next year. Ash, I want to play a little trivia with you here before we say goodbye to our fine viewers.
You're going to quiz me?
There are 4 baseball teams with 20 or more wins right now as we do the show live on Thursday. There are a few with 18, so there could be, by the time we hit the weekend, more than just the 4. But can you name all 4?
20 or more. I know the Yankees have 17, so there have to be several in their division that have 20 or more. So I'm going to go with the Rays.
Correct.
Do the Jays have 20 or more?
The Orioles.
Oh, shnikes. Not the Jays, though.
No. Not yet.
So the Rays and the Orioles. Let's go to a different division. Let's go somewhere. Who's surprising this year? The Rangers?
Not yet, but they're close.
I don't know. I'm not going to be good at this game.
The Braves have 20.
Oh, of course, your team. I should have gone there first.
The Pirates have 20.
Woo! Wouldn't have gotten there. Definitely wouldn't have gotten that one.
Pirates and the Orioles. I mean, what is this? The 80s? I don't know.
That's it. All 4. Those are the only 4 teams
right now. There are a bunch of teams with 18.
I know, but it's funny because we were talking about the Yankees only having 17, and you're like, a bunch of teams have 18. They're close, and only 4 have more than 20. So the Yanks really aren't that far off.
Right. It's the inflation of wins by the Rays that make those 8.5 game deficit look so daunting. But you're right. It's really not as bad as it probably could be with all those injuries. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. Watch that Kentucky Derby, and good luck as you do it. Thanks for watching Onorato and Company.